In today's video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about herd dynamics. If you're new here, my name is Brandy and I welcome you to join me on my horsemanship journey. But first I want to say that if you're just chiming in, it would be good to go back and watch the previous two videos so you know what's happening. This is the third video in my Blanketing Saga series, and it's really important that you see the information that was shown in the previous videos. I'll be sure to put the link in the description below. The last two videos have stirred up quite a bit of conversation, and I thought it would be easiest to answer some comments just by doing a video. One of the comments that was frequently asked in yesterday's video is, will Miss Kitty be accepted into the herd again? The answer is yes. As soon as I pulled the blanket off of Miss Kitty, she stayed where she was standing for a little while, but then meandered back into the herd and everything went right back to normal. Instead of blanketing Miss Kitty, why don't I just put her in a stall? Well, let me tell you. Basically, when Miss Kitty is away from her herd, she gets very stressed out. Now, she is almost 27 years old. I don't like to stall horses if I don't have to. I want them to be good for when I go to an event so they can be in a stall and be comfortable with it. But I'm not big on leaving them in stalls every night just because. Several reasons. For one, with Miss Kitty, she gets extremely stressed out when she's away from the herd like that. She doesn't like to be locked up. I want to make sure that Miss Kitty is as comfortable as possible. With the age that she's at, I don't want to do anything to really mess up her world a whole lot. So keeping her in a stall is really stressful for her, and she won't eat. So when Miss Kitty won't eat, that concerns me because she really can't afford to lose any weight. Now, her entire life, she's really never cared about being in a stall. It's never bothered her at all. And this is just of recently, with her age, she just is not comfortable without her herd. I have my own reasons for not wanting to keep horses in stalls besides just Miss Kitty's own personal comfort. But for one, how would you like to be locked in your bathroom all night? You know, I just don't really see stalls as being anything that's all that beneficial for horses unless they are on a special diet and need to be separated from the herd, or there's a specific reason for it. Some people like to just keep their horses in stalls, and that's fine. I don't care what other people do. I just know that my horses are happier and healthier being outside the way that nature intended them to be. Some people ask me why I don't put Miss Kitty in the same paddock that Nika and Manzer were in. Well, funny you should ask, because last year she was actually in that paddock with Nika while she was pregnant and with Ona. And what happened is, her being in such a smaller area with her food and water being so close together, Miss Kitty would eat her hay, she'd walk to her water, and that was pretty much the extent of her exercise. So, and I didn't use her for a lot of lessons because I was just kind of trying to be nice and giving her some time off. And what that did is it really caused some issues with her arthritis, and it also caused a lot of muscle atrophy. So I thought I was doing something good for her by giving her a nice spot with a huge shelter and, you know, access to food and water that was really close, and it was one of the worst things I could have done for her. So the vet told me, absolutely do not do that. She needs to be able to move around. And another thing too to think about is you either use it or you lose it. So when a horse doesn't move around as much as they should be, they start to lose the use of all of those joints. Stuff doesn't work as well when you stop using it. It's really important for our older horses to be able to get as much exercise as possible in a manner that is going to help them. The best thing for Miss Kitty is for her to be out in her herd environment so she can continue to walk around and get an adequate amount of exercise in a day. Several people have asked, well, what if I just took Miss Kitty and the blanket out into the pasture and put the blanket on her in the pasture so the horses could see that it was her? Here's the problem that lies with that. So there are 2 leg straps, 2 belly straps, and 2 chest straps on her blanket. And then I also would need to be holding on to her with the lead rope while I put all that stuff on. In the meantime, the horses are going to be so curious as to what's going on that they're all going to crowd around. Now, the problem is Miss Kitty doesn't really like other horses being too close in her space, so her immediate reaction is to get out of there. So here I would be putting that blanket on, trying to get all the straps done up as quickly as possible while she's trying to get away from the other horses. And that just doesn't sound like a very smart situation to me. So now I also want to point out that the reason that all the horses went after her is because she ran. They were all curious. They all wanted to see what this foreign object was out in the pasture, and it kept moving. And as soon as she ran from them, they all went with her. And as you saw, there were a few dominant horses that were the ones that were really driving her out of the herd. Well, the rest of them were just kind of running around having a good old time. Now, the reason for that is horses do that for their own protection. So being a herd animal and being a prey animal, it is their job to make sure that their herd stays safe. So the most dominant horses will drive out any horses that are sick or injured or different because they don't want predators to come into the herd. Now, Miss Kitty didn't actually get hurt. She wasn't attacked, she was just chased. If I were to put a blanket on a more dominant horse, which I'm going to do just for experimental purposes, just to show you, I am guessing that we're gonna have a completely different reaction out of the herd than we did with Miss Kitty. If you're not gonna keep a blanket on Miss Kitty all the time, why don't you just separate her whenever she's blanketed so you don't have to worry about the other horses picking on her? I like to fix problems instead of just masking them. So I wanna make sure that I can take Miss Kitty and put her out with her herd with a blanket on without any issues. So it's just a matter of me working through it and making sure that my horses are all comfortable with it. Why don't I just hang the blanket out for the herd to see it? Well, it doesn't really work that way. So the thing is the blanket was on a horse and it was moving. And the fact that Miss Kitty acted differently and then ran is what caused the whole uproar. So if I were to just leave the blanket out in the pasture where they could sniff it or whatever, they would be over it in a few seconds. I mean, some of them would want to play with it, and then I'd be dealing with them, you know, ripping holes in it and tearing off with it and all that kind of stuff that I just really don't want to deal with. Getting them used to seeing it on a horse is what's important. There's so much about Miss Kitty that I really want to share with everybody, especially things that have happened in the last couple of months with her getting older and then after her choking incident. I will put all of her videos that I have in chronological order in her playlist. I'll make sure to put a link to her playlist in the description. Some people were asking why Miss Kitty went into the snow, and basically Miss Kitty knew that she was safe if she went out into the deep snow and that the other horses would stop bothering her. And she was right on, because as soon as she went out there, the other horses just sort of gave up. So it was really good of her to do that. She just knew that that was the best option. Some people were wondering why I didn't go out to comfort Miss Kitty, and basically that's not what she needed. She needed to be left alone and not feel like the herd was driving her out. So the best thing to do was to let all the horses settle down and then go out and remove the blanket like I did, and then just let everything settle back in. So another thing too is, if you've ever watched horses maneuver around in snow, you'd know that they kind of hop around. It's sort of awkward for them and pretty unpredictable where they're gonna go. So, and also the snow here is about up to my waist. So for me to wander around out in the snow by her, and if the other horses were to happen to come out there and chase her, I'd be putting myself in a really dangerous position. And that's just pretty irresponsible on my part. So it was better for me to just sit back and watch and wait until they all settle down. Someone asked if the horses all settled down because I was there, and the answer is no. That's just kind of how it works with horses. They get upset about something or scared, they run around, and then once they kind of realize, oh, this is silly, it's really nothing to be worried about, then they all stop. Someone had asked what would happen if I were a hooded long coat out in the pasture. And basically, if they can't see my face or they don't know that it's me, they would run like hell. I wore an inflatable hippo suit one day during one of my teen camps. So if you want to see that video, leave me a comment below. Were the horses afraid of the blanket because of its color? Absolutely not. Horses don't really get afraid of colors. Patterns can really affect them sometimes, and it really just depends on the movement. So for instance, I'll give you an example. Miss Kitty is terrified of the large soccer ball that I have in my arena, but she's not afraid of the red one. And to make it even a little bit more complicated for you, she's only afraid of the black and white soccer ball if it's rolling in her direction. If she's the one pushing it, she's not afraid of it. But the red ball, she doesn't care if it's coming or going. She's not afraid of it at all. Hi. So had Miss Kitty's blanket been patterned, so like with zebra stripes or polka dots or something like that, the horses would more than likely be a little bit more afraid of it and run from her instead of them wanting to go after her. Now I'm going to show you this as an example. So these boxes, I have 5 of these boxes. They are filled with hay. And we also have a big round bale net out here filled with hay. And I want you to see where Miss Kitty's standing. So this is very typical of Miss Kitty. She likes to be by herd members, but she doesn't necessarily want to be in with the herd members. So she's not hungry right now. She's been sitting in a stall for the last hour or two, just munching on hay and eating her grain. And she's not hungry, but she wants to be with the herd members. She feels safe if she's with the herd. Hey, baby. Hi, honey. Now, some people suggested that I shouldn't have left her out with the herd, but that's where she wants to be. Miss Kitty loves to be out with her herd. She doesn't like to be alone or separated. Being away from the herd simply stresses her out. She likes to be with her herd, and she is happiest in this environment. The way that Miss Kitty acted when I brought her out is what started the whole thing. So when I led her out into the pasture, the other horses were interested to see what was on her, and they all started coming towards her, and that made her incredibly nervous. She doesn't like to be right in with the herd. She likes to be to the outside. She's not one to cause any trouble, and she's definitely one to stay out of trouble. So as soon as they were all showing so much interest in her, she thought she needed to get the heck out of there. Well, as soon as she ran, the rest of them went after her. Moving forward, what I'm going to do is make sure that my herd is comfortable with her being blanketed, because on days where I feel like it's necessary for her to have a blanket on, I need to make sure that I can safely put her out with the herd. So I'll be spending the next week or so working on introducing her to the herd with a blanket on and making sure that they're good with that. So stay tuned, because I'll have more videos coming to show you exactly what I do to fix that. How a horse is going to react to something new or to a different situation really depends on that individual horse. So there's really no textbook way of going about it. You just kind of have to watch your horse's behavior and go from there. A lot of people will say, well, I blanketed my horse my whole life and I've never had a problem like that. Well, you don't have the same horses that I have, or maybe the same situation that I have. So I don't think that it matters how many horses are in a herd. I think it matters what horses are in a herd that causes the herd as a whole to react in a certain way. This is what they do for 90% of their day. They eat and stand. And if you see that, Miss Kitty just walked up and kind of pinned her ears a little, and Muffin said, okay, it's yours. One of the questions that was also asked in the blanketing video is, why is Miss Kitty the lowest on the pecking order in the herd? Well, her and Muffin and, a couple of the others are right down on the bottom, but it's just like with anything. She's just not a leader like some of the other horses are. How horse relationships work is there is a leader always. So with a horse and a human, I don't care if it's a horse and a chicken, a horse and a dog, a horse and a pony, one of them is always going to be the leader. The horse needs that. So that's why so many humans run into issues with their horses, is because they don't establish that leadership role. And it's not about dominance or anything like that. It's somebody always has to be the leader as far as a horse is concerned. They need that in their lives to operate. Do you see the look on Miss Kitty's face? She's like, ugh. That's annoyance right there. Ona likes Miss Kitty, but Miss Kitty wants to be left alone. See, so Ona's like, I'm going to go over here and pester you guys. So that's just Miss Kitty's personality. She likes to be left alone. Well, I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please be sure to give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you feel like you have anything of value to add to this video, please leave a comment below. I know a lot of people really go through the comments and read everything, so it's very helpful when you can share your stories of your personal experiences. Just think it could be helping somebody else out. So, okay, well, tomorrow I'm going to be sharing the video of Ona and Sally's introduction into the herd. I know it's from a while ago, but I think you'll really find it interesting, especially after watching these last few videos with Miss Kitty. So, all right, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.